A-10 Warthogs are being deployed to protect America's most lethal maritime assets. As the simplest threats are becoming the greatest, it's up to the Hog to finally stop them. Plus, the Air Force got the crashed KC-135 over Iraq back into the skies with a brand new tail. The most popular bomb in the US arsenal just got a massive upgrade. I'm Thomas Mott, this is MachSquawk. It's not every day you see an A-10 Warthog flying Escort over the Pacific Ocean for an Ohio-class ballistic missile sub. And that's really because we're not supposed to actually see the Ohio-class ballistic missile subs every single day. But the US Navy just gave us a behind-the-scenes look at one of the rare times the A-10 Warthog is used as an armed airborne escort, or AAE, for perhaps the US military's most destructive and most valuable asset in its entire arsenal. As the Navy officially released these photos from back on July 28th during an exercise in the Pacific Ocean, showcasing the ability of the A-10 to be a flying armed guard for the SSBNs. And this is something that hasn't happened publicly since 2024, but it's all for a very important reason. The US only has 14 Ohio-class nuclear missile submarines, each capable of carrying as many as 20 Triton II long-range missiles, which not only can travel over 7,400 kilometers, but also deliver 12 independently targeted thermonuclear warheads that re-enter the Earth's atmosphere at 20 times the speed of sound, which makes these submarines maybe the most deadly weapon in the entire US military arsenal, and getting them in and out of ports is extremely tricky. We'll talk about that, and that's where the A-10 Warthog really comes into play. Submarines are most vulnerable when they're on the surface, and all of them have to surface at some point at a minimum to enter or exit a port. And even during times of relatively low tensions or potential threats, an Ohio-class sub is so heavily protected, it always enters a port with at least 4 black powder-class support ships, whose only mission is to provide additional protection by sailing right next to the sub, ready and willing to act as a sacrificial shield potentially for any attacks. But during times of heightened tensions or obviously war, we're in one of those right now, the US Navy will upgrade their overall protection of these ballistic missile subs, both in the skies and in the waters below. As the A-10 Warthog has remained one of the best air cover options for Ohio-class subs for a much simpler reason than you might think. As the greatest current emerging threat to surface subs these days are small, fast, and cheap watercraft laden with explosives. So they can be operated both by state and non-state actors, but increasingly by drone technology. Essentially, it's super simple. Strap a bunch of C4 onto a fiberglass boat, and you have a kamikaze boat or kamikaze drone that potentially could get close enough to a sub and absolutely cause some serious damage. Which is exactly what happened back in 2000, for example, when the USS Cole had 2 suicide bombers blow a 40-foot wide hole in the Cole during a fuel stop in Yemen. And so right now, again, during heightened tensions, what better platform to use to both hunt and protect against small boats than the A-10 Warthog? As not only does the Hog have the best loiter time of any single-seat attack or fighter aircraft in the US Air Force, but it was really built to hit small moving ground targets with exact precision. As A-10s themselves in the Middle East, over Iran, and specifically the Strait of Hormuz, have been doing just that over the past couple of months, hunting and destroying Iranian fast attack craft that could threaten any civilian ships attempting to cross the strait. And whether it's the A-10's legendary 30mm cannon, or Maverick attack missiles, or precision-guided bombs, they have all of the right munitions and really the overall arsenal to attack these fast-moving boats and take them out before they could get anywhere near an Ohio-class sub. But of course, as we know, the A-10 Warthogs are on their way out. The fleet is getting smaller and smaller the past couple of years, and as it stands, there are only 2 active squadrons in the entire US. And so once they're gone in the 2030s, who's going to be left to go ahead and protect the subs? As a replacement right now is not super obvious. Like for years, the AH-64 Apache has also been used for this exact same exercise. However, it's mainly used during port entry and re-entry, as the Hog's ability to traverse large areas while also mid-air refuel still makes it the best long-range escort weapon for extensive crossings, as we saw during this exercise. All in all, it's going to be fascinating to see what the Navy and the Air Force does over the next couple of years to continue to protect their Ohio-class submarines, because as they enter and re-enter ports, especially in war-torn areas, kamikaze drones, drone warfare in general is going to become a serious threat. Whether it's A-10s, whether it's Apaches, whether it's other boats, we don't know, but it's crazy to get a behind-the-scenes look at the A-10 working with the Navy to protect perhaps the US military's most important asset. Now, staying with Middle East transits, and our next story goes right to the KC-135 involved in the mid-air over Iraq during the early stages of Operation Epic Fury, as it not only received a brand new tail, but now has officially made its way home this past week. As the Aviationists wrote in their coverage of the story, quote, the surviving KC-135R Stratotanker from the incident over Iraq in March, which saw another Stratotanker lost with 6 fatalities, has been repaired with a replacement vertical stabilizer taken from another aircraft. with aircraft spotters outside RAF Mendenhall in the UK filming the tanker officially arriving after its flight from Israel following the highly publicized sortie back in March, when this KC-135 struck another KC-135 during a night mission which caused the Stratotanker, callsign Zeus 95, to crash into the ground, resulting in the death of all 6 crew members. The tanker that survived, however, had nearly half of its vertical stabilizer ripped off, as you see right here, yet somehow still managed to not only squawk 7700 for an emergency, but land safely on the ground at Tel Aviv's Ben Gurion International Airport, where it essentially has been sitting there for the past 5 months as the U.S. Air Force began an incredible project to not only get a replacement tail flown all the way to the Middle East, but put back on the KC-135 and made it airworthy. As again, for the past 5 months, military engineers completely replaced the destroyed tail with a donor vertical stabilizer taken off a KC-135 that was sitting at the depot all the way back in the U.S. at Tinker Air Force Base. So essentially, they took the stabilizer off of a KC-135 in America, put it on the back of a C-17 or a C-5, flew it all the way over to the Middle East and Israel, took off the damaged stabilizer on the current KC-135 we're talking about, replaced it, made sure it was airworthy, flew it a couple of times, and now they've flown it all the way back to the UK. And if you're wondering why I go through this entire painstaking process to save just one KC-135, well, the Stratotankers are currently slated to live on until at least 2050, with the ongoing problems of the brand new Stratotanker replacement, the KC-46 Pegasus, making sure every single airframe like this one survives as long as possible remains a top priority. This entire story has been absolutely wild, from an actual midair taking place over Iraq. We don't know the exact details of that one, but we do know it was at night. How did they collide? Were they refueling each other? We don't know, right? But to go from that to having the horrific crash, the 6 fatalities as well, but also have one still be able to survive and land with half the stabilizer missing, and now it's replaced and it's flying again. What an incredible story. Drop a like down below for that. Now, staying with the sea theme of today's show, went over to the Navy's P-8 Poseidon and its soon-to-be drone wingman. TWZ reported this week that Boeing and Northrop Grumman are beginning to lay the groundwork to take teaming between the P-8 Poseidon maritime patrol plane and the MQ-4C Triton maritime surveillance drone to the next level. The TWZ, writing, quote, "A first-of-its-kind test has demonstrated common command and control architectures that will enable P-8 crews to issue orders to MQ-4Cs. The drones would then perform their assigned missions autonomously and report back. As the Poseidon and Triton were designed to operate as a team from the start, but the ability to task the uncrewed aircraft directly in flight would offer new flexibility, especially to respond to sudden changes in the battle space." And all of that sounds incredible, but worth noting here, Boeing put this very far down on their press release. This was not a live fire demonstration. This was all done simulated without aircraft in a lab. And that's a key point, but it remains a very important next step for the two platforms that have already been working together for years, as the MQ-4C has long been used as a maritime ISR asset that feeds P-8's updates on positions of contacts of interest, with the main benefit of the drone being that it can fly significantly higher and target longer than the standard Poseidons. But as TWZ did write, quote, "What Boeing and Northrop Grumman have demonstrated, at least in a test lab, is the ability for P-8 crews to dynamically task and retask MQ-4Cs without having to go through a command center on the ground that could be thousands of miles away. This in turn can only speed up the process of responding to sudden developments, which could include potential threats that pop up unexpectedly or targets of interest that appear to be fleeting. And really, overall, the ability to detect and classify potential items of interest and then highlight them for human personnel to review offers an immense benefit for shrinking down the time it takes to collect data and then make the appropriate action." All of this centers around timing, right? As it currently stands, the drone and the Poseidon have been working together for years now, but normally the Poseidon has to relay the control center thousands of miles away. Hey, can you tell the drone to go ahead and do this? They then go ahead and relay the drone does this, it goes over there, and then comes back to the control center, and then back over here to the Poseidon. It takes a very, very long time. What we're demonstrating right here, what Boeing officially just did was the P-8 can control the drone itself, tell it to go do something autonomously. The drone completes the task, comes back, reports to the P-8, and it creates a much smoother transition and timing overall. Now, last but not least, but maybe most important, the U.S. Air Force just officially bought a brand new longer-range JDAM in an attempt to expand its arsenal of long-range standoff strike options. With Air and Space Forces, writing, quote, "The Air Force awarded Boeing a $75 million production contract, begin supplying the long-range JDAMs as the service seeks to expand its arsenal and extend the range of its key munitions. The BSU-111 Payload Delivery Unit creates a new JDAM variant, the GBU-75 JDAM-LR, with a standoff range of more than 300 nautical miles for a 500-pound payload, according to Boeing in their release. which, if you don't know JDAM ranges, is significantly, much longer than the standard GBU-38. This new JDAM-LR was developed through the Navy and only completed flight testing in April, marking rapid development by typical standards. Recognition that fourth-generation aircraft need this capability soon, the Air Force and the Navy need less costly alternatives to missiles for standoff attacks. Also, according to this release, the new JDAM-LR is designed specifically for fighters to go ahead and employ. However, both the Air Force and Navy are planning on finding a way to make sure they work on bombers as well. All this, of course, comes on the heels of Operation Epic Fury, where U.S. forces have expended an estimated 10,000 JDAM standards in the Middle East. And due again to the widely publicized and criticized munition inventory shortages, this $75 million production contract could not have come at a better time. We're seeing a lot of stories like this throughout the defense contracting industry, where clearly production of munitions is ramping up, and the overall time to make these munitions is hopefully getting shorter, as that's an ongoing problem right now for not only the defense contractors, the U.S. military as well. How can we get longer range standoff weapons at a cheaper price and faster to the military? It's an ongoing problem they're working to fix. Now, of course, plenty more stuff happening here on MachSquawk the next couple of days and weeks. We're almost to 16,000 subs here on the channel. If you enjoy it, drop a like, leave a hype, leave me a comment down below. We're trying to grow as fast as possible. I love military aviation. I know you guys who watch this do as well. I cannot thank you guys enough. I'm Thomas Mott. This has been MachSquawk.